Up until this point, you've been modifying your colors by choosing different colors for your strokes and your fills by clicking on the stroke or fill color box over here in your toolbox. There's actually another way that allows you to choose different colors in a way that gives you a little bit more control over how you choose those colors, and that is in the Color Mixer panel. By default on both Mac and Windows, the Color Mixer panel should be open, but it may be minimized by default over here on the right hand side. To maximize it, just click on the title bar or the black arrow in the title bar to maximize that palette. If you don't see the Color Mixer palette initially available to you, you can always open it again by choosing Window, Design Panels, Color Mixer, and then we'll open that Color Mixer panel for you. Now from here you can change either the fill or the stroke color. When you want to modify one of those colors, you need to make sure that you have it selected first here in the Color Mixer panel. Right now you can see that the fill color is selected because it's depressed. If you want to modify the stroke color, you can just click on the stroke color icon to select it, and then you can modify its settings here. I'm going to modify the fill color, so I'm going to make sure that I click on this little paint bucket icon so that my fill color is selected. On the right hand side, you can actually enter in the individual RGB or red, green, blue values of your colors. If you're working with other designers who may have been doing their graphics mock-ups and other graphics editing programs such as Adobe Photoshop or Macromedia Fireworks, and they've designed their colors and layout in RGB, they may give you an RGB value, a red, green, blue value that you can just enter in these fields. So when someone's giving you some color specifications, or if you're translating your designs over from another graphics program and you know the RGB color values of the colors you're choosing, you can always open your Color Mixer panel and enter those values in here. You'll also notice below that you can also set the alpha color as well. Now normally you would think of fills inside of Flash as being solid opaque colors. And that's not actually true. You can specify an alpha value for your colors here. So if I wanted a partially opaque red, I can just drag my alpha slider down to say 50%, and I have a 50% opaque red color selected. If I wanted to apply that to anything, I can just select my paint bucket tool and click on the fill of my shape. It's now filled with a 50% alpha color. So if I put anything behind it, you'd actually be able to see partially transparent that object behind it, because again, this fill color is 50% alpha. Beneath that, you can choose any hue you want. So just by clicking and dragging in this hue box, I can pick any hue I want, and then to the right of that, you can actually change the value, whether you want the color to be a dark value or a light value by clicking on this black slider and dragging it down or up to change the value of the color that you've picked here. So the Color Mixer panel is pretty straightforward. You can also set your colors to their default colors. Beneath the Fill Color button, there's a little black and white color icon, and it says black and white if you hover your mouse over it. If you click on that icon, it'll set your fill color to be white, solid, 100% alpha, and your stroke color to be black, solid, 100% alpha as well. So if you just want to revert back to your default settings, you can click on that button there. You can also switch your foreground and background colors by clicking on this Swap Colors icon, which looks like a curved line with two arrows between them. If you click on that button, you can swap your fill and stroke colors back and forth. The same buttons that you see here in your Color Mixer panel, by the way, are also available to you over here in your toolbox underneath your stroke and fill color icons. Also available to you in your toolbox is the No Color icon, which looks like a white box with a red diagonal line going through it. As you saw when you were drawing oval and rectangles with your oval and rectangle tools, it would draw with both a fill and a stroke. But what if you wanted to draw an oval that didn't have a fill, it just had a stroke? You could do that by selecting your fill color here in your toolbox and clicking on the No Color icon. That would actually remove the color from the fill, and then when you drew with your circle, it would draw with only a stroke and no fill. You don't see those options happening here because I don't have my oval tool selected, of course. To do that, you just select the oval tool, select your fill color, click No Color, and you can see it puts that same No Color icon here in your fill color swatch. And then I could just choose a different stroke color, such as black. And then when I draw an oval next time, it'll draw it with just a stroke and no fill on the inside. So there's quite a few things that you can do both in the color mixer as well as in the toolbox by modifying the colors here. Now, one other thing I'd like to point out is the different types of fills that you have available to you. In your color mixer panel, I'm going to select the fill color, and I'm going to set the fill color to be something standard, such as blue. To the right of your fill color box, there's a pull-down menu, and by default it should say solid. But if you click on that pull-down menu, you can see there's a few different options that you can choose from. You can choose none, which is the same as clicking on the no color icon. You can choose solid, which is just a solid color. And you can also choose linear or radial. These both refer to gradients. I can choose a linear gradient or a radial gradient. Your last option is bitmap. And in Flash, you can actually select a bitmap and fill objects with that bitmap. So if I had a bitmap selected, I could select a bitmap and fill my circle with that particular bitmap. For now, go ahead and select radial. When you select radial, you'll notice that your color mixer panel will change to give you settings for creating a radial gradient. And by default, it gives you a radial gradient, as you can see down here in this preview window, that is black on the inside and white on the outside. You can modify this gradient, however, by clicking and dragging these sliders around. Also, when you select a slider by clicking on it once, you can modify its color because you'll see a little color picker appear above that slider, and you can choose any color you'd like. If I select a different color, you'll see that color integrated into the gradient. You can also add more colors to the gradient by clicking anywhere where there isn't a color slider along this gradient box. So if I just click here in the middle, for instance, it's going to create another color in this gradient. I can then select that color swatch, choose any other color I'd like, and now you've thrown a third color into the mix. Psychedelic, man. So I can modify and create gradients from within this gradient window, and you can actually have up to 8 radial gradients. So I have 3, I can have 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. So there are my 8 gradient colors that I can specify in that gradient. And believe me, 8 colors in a gradient should be more than enough to accomplish whatever kind of effect you're wanting for a gradient. Now, to remove a gradient color, once you've added it, you can just click on the color swatch and drag it down to delete it. So I can, by this means, delete all the extra colors that I don't need from my gradient color just by clicking and dragging them down to remove them. So I'm going to go back to my original 2 colors for my gradient. Once you've designed your radial or linear gradient here inside your color mixer panel, you can apply it to any shape you'd like by selecting the paint bucket tool and then clicking on the fill of a shape. In this case, I have my circle on the stage. I'm just going to go ahead and click on that circle to assign my radial gradient to it. In the next exercise, I'm going to show you actually how to modify how a gradient is being applied to your shape by using a separate tool called the Fill Transform tool. And that will allow you to modify how the gradient is being applied to your shape. We're going to look at that in the next movie. From here, though, I hope you've seen the power that you can have by choosing different colors and modifying and creating different gradient colors inside the color mixer panel.